Okay, I think we are live in real time. Good evening and welcome to 1455's fifth annual Summer Story Fest. This is something I look forward to every year. It's our special Young Poets Award reading. And tonight we are joined by a couple of very special guests, Alexandria, Virginia's Poet Laureate, Zaina Azam. We are also excited to be joined by a number of our finalists who will read their award-winning poems. And my co-judge is here, the amazing Maia Siegel. I will introduce both of them. Couple of quick words to get us started tonight. As I said, this is not only one of my favorite parts of every year's festival, it's one of my favorite parts of every year. It's the Young Poets Award Ceremony and Reading. This is, as I was saying right before we came live on the air, this is a celebration. It's a celebration of art. It's a celebration of community. It's a celebration of connection. Having completed another successful competition, I can confirm two things, and I say this every year, and knock wood, it's always true. The contest gets better each cycle, and choosing a grand prize winner in each category becomes more difficult, but it's very much a labor of love. I'm grateful to all the young poets who are here tonight from America and beyond. I'm grateful to all the poets who submitted work. We can't choose everyone, but the poems were extraordinary. And at 1455, we understand that encouraging creativity applies to all ages and levels of experience. Our year-round free programming bears that out. As such, we like to make a statement every year with this contest and the awards that recognizing young writers is not only important, but necessary. As a reminder to everyone, the theme for this year's contest was connection with a capital C, and the guidelines requested that the poems reflect on or react to the contemporary sociopolitical and cultural environment. Every poem that made the final cut successfully explored these guidelines, but the diverse and provocative variations on the themes were, just like in previous years, extraordinary. It always causes me to pause and reflect on a couple of things while I'm reading these poems and starting to judge them. One, our world is so much more complicated than it was when I was a student. And as such, I feel so fortunate that we have such sensitive, intelligent, and engaging young minds helping all of us make sense of this increasingly crazy world we live in, and how to understand that no matter what noise is going on in the periphery, we need to connect, we need to come together in solidarity, and art enables us to do that. We talk a lot about connection at 1455. It's one of the primary impulses of creativity, to instigate dialogue, to foster expression, and perhaps most importantly, to make us feel less alone. This year's collection of poems do inspire dialogue, they seek understanding, and they inspire solidarity. And in a time where we're seeing, just like last year and the years before, a general lack of courage and common sense, both by our elected officers and our neighbors, these poems come together as an indictment and an aspiration to our better angels. So I'm also delighted to remind everyone that in addition to tonight's event, which is being recorded and will be housed on our website and on our YouTube page, our quarterly e-zine, Movable Type, has a special issue for poetry each year, and all of the final poems, including some runners-ups and some special excerpts, will all be featured in that issue, which will be coming out this fall. And I'll have some editorial comments to accompany that issue. So I want to keep my remarks very brief tonight. So with that, and properly kick things off, it is an extraordinary pleasure and honor to welcome Zaina. She is the Poet Laureate of Alexandria, Virginia. She's a Palestinian-American poet, as well as a writer, editor, and community activist. She's been nominated for the Pushcart Prize. Her poems have been published in a variety of magazines, and her next collection, Some Things Never Leave You, is forthcoming. Zaina, thank you for agreeing to be here. This is not our first rodeo. It's always a pleasure to be in your company. It's a pleasure to hear you talk about poetry. It's certainly a pleasure to hear you read your poetry. So I roll out the red carpet. You honor us with your presence. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sean. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. And congratulations to the winners of the Young Poets Contest. I read a couple of the poems on the 1455 website. I think they were by Naomi and Claudia. I was blown away by the depth of thinking and feeling and passion for life's experiences. I can't wait to hear all the poets read their fine work tonight. And I'm already so proud of all of you. It's wonderful that 1455, as a result of Sean Murphy's guidance and vision and the work of many supporters, I'm sure that 1455 has this mission to lift up emerging poets, emerging writers, and give them the resources and recognition to pursue this creativity that they have. So my hat's off to you, Sean, and to 1455 for carving out the space for young people and for inspiring and encouraging them to express themselves through poetry. I hope you will keep taking time to reflect and build on your experiences and expand your imagination and continue to write a lot of poetry. I say this because it's our imagination, our experiences in life, and our willingness to step out of our comfort zones that all make us change and grow and open our perspectives to different ways of thinking. And like this great theme of the contest, it's our human connection that we explore through poetry. And also by doing so, we deepen the connection. I wanted to share with you, and Sean mentioned this already, that my family hails from the Arab world, and Arabic was my first language. We're Palestinian, and I grew up with a deep appreciation of poetry. In fact, like many other cultures, poetry is very, very important in Arab culture. And there have been instances where a poetry reading would draw hundreds, if not thousands, of people. A wonderful thing is that I don't know how many people who are online know Arabic, but the word for poet in Arabic is sha'ir. And sha'ir comes from the root word to sense and to feel. So the poet in the Arabic language and Arab culture is considered to be the one who has a heightened sense of feeling and sensing. And so how lovely is that? I give a lot of thought to why we write poetry, and I thought I would just share a few ideas that I have. I think that through poetry, we express our feelings about life's challenges. We connect with something deeper in ourselves, both our hearts and our minds. And poetry is also a way to connect with others on issues that are important to us, to celebrate our interconnectedness. And this speaks again to the theme of the contest. A poem is also a way to raise awareness and to illuminate an issue or shed light on certain ideas. It can offer something surprising, and it can also be a source of comfort. Poetry is also a way to galvanize people to act, to do something about social issues. As you know, poems and songs have often served this purpose. And finally, to me, poetry gives me the permission to operate in life in this very special space, a space of sensing the world around me and making sense of it, or trying to make sense of it by writing about it. And it's a space of feeling emotions and not being afraid to articulate them. This is sort of a vulnerable space, and I think a lot of people are not comfortable in it, but as a poet, I think it's something to embrace and to celebrate. I imagine some of you either grew up with another language in your house or studied one at school or college. So for me, being bilingual, I'm fluent in Arabic. I've also studied quite a bit of French and Spanish, and also being raised in both the Palestinian Arab and American cultures. This has made me a person with a deep sensitivity to the experiences of others who may be marginalized or considered different or discriminated against in society. And my background also makes me profoundly appreciative and respectful of the diverse cultures that we encounter every day. So, whether this is in person or on social media, in books and music and the visual arts. So, I urge you to read poems in different languages. If you're talented enough to have another language, can read poetry in another language, I really urge you to do that. And if not, and even if you are, there are so many other languages that we don't know. There's so many, we really are fortunate to have access to a lot of translated poetry. And I really urge you to read poetry from different parts of the world. Here's a poem I wrote about growing up in two cultures and languages. It's called Bicultural. I am a tree with grafts, the hybrid with orange and red flowers and variegated leaves, fed with morning sunlight, watered by rains that speak a different language. No one knows the secrets I carry. They have hands that meld and mold all the tales told to me by storytellers from south and north. My lines are not bold or fixed anymore, though clearer, like sanded wood. My trunk, thick and textured, sways to rhythms, reaches high. And here's a poem about raising my own children in the United States and trying to instill a love in them for my mother tongue and my mother culture. I think a lot of immigrants, especially first generation immigrants, really have this tension of how to transmit the culture and the language to the next generation. So this poem has a few Arabic words in it, but I think you'll get them from the context. You'll understand them. It's titled A Language for Colors. Asfar, she would say, pointing at a yellow tulip. And the color of grass, akhdar. My young daughter, had mastered not only the colors, but also the throaty KH, two letters in English that equal one in Arabic. I would tell her it's the same sound as in khamse, khubz, sabanich, 5, bread, spinach, and my favorite name, Khalid, immortal. I once confessed to a friend wistfully that I would not name my son Khalid because Americans couldn't pronounce it. Now I wonder about such wisdom. Even my 8-year-old could constrict her throat muscles the right way to say Khalid, immortal like an ancient olive tree, a flame that never abates, a mother's love. This spring, I saw a patch of double hybrid tulips, asfar tinged with akhdar, and thought of my daughter's satisfied grin at learning those words thousands of miles away from her grandparents' home in Palestine. Here we are, hybrid Americans, living between two languages and speaking in colors, splendid flowers in a distant field. And I have one more poem. This is a short one, and it highlights refugees and their longing for home. I wrote this poem when a group of refugees from Syria traveled to our area, and a local dental clinic offered their services for free. So they asked community members to come and volunteer their time to translate between the refugees and the dentists and the dental workers. So here's a short poem titled Syrian Refugee at the Dental Clinic. Iman from Homs is 20 years old. At 13, she married and got pregnant with the first of 4 children. A broken tooth and 3 cavities, baby on her breast, mouth wincing in pain. Iman never learned to use a toothbrush to clean accumulated tar, plaque, or microscopic bits of food left over from her journey a month ago. Maybe that's why she clenches her teeth to keep the taste of home. I'll end by telling you a little story that I read recently. In 2006, the late American writer and humorist Kurt Vonnegut was invited to a high school to give a speech. He was 84 at that time, and he had made a decision not to make any more public appearances. So he just decided to write a letter to the high school students, telling them that he would not be visiting. But I'd like to quote a paragraph from his letter. So this is a letter from him to the young people. He says, "What I have to say to you would not take long. Practice any art, music, singing, dancing, acting, drawing, painting, sculpting, poetry, fiction, essays, reportage, no matter how well or badly, not to get money and fame, but to experience becoming, to find out what's inside you, to make your soul grow." I love this idea of experiencing becoming and making one's soul grow. The medium of poetry, just like so many arts, allows us to grow and cultivate our sense of ourselves and our sense of wonder. Poetry connects us to ourselves, to each other, and to the world, and we grow and we become together. Thank you.
Wow. Zaina, thank you so much for elevating these proceedings and listening to you read poetry. I say this often because I think this often, but I think most folks would agree. There's something very special about the solitary engagement of reading the words on a page that connects us through centuries and languages. But to hear a poet read their work is a very special opportunity. So I love hearing your voice. I love your poems. And I think you already kind of answered this, especially with the Vonnegut quote, but I would love you to just say a couple of words, especially for young folks that are tuning in to this or will be watching this. In your role of poet laureate, of course, there's a lot to that, but I think perhaps the primary role is to just make poetry accessible, to advocate and evangelize for the creativity. And I think Vonnegut's quote really gets to the heart of the matter, which is this is not a competition. This is not a way to measure oneself. It's a way to express, but maybe offer some words of encouragement or enlightenment to either folks that are wanting to get into poetry, or how can they get more involved in their communities?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that it's really important to be involved in our communities. Poetry and everything else, it's really important to volunteer in your community, to know what's going on, to get to know the vulnerable communities around you, to help them out. I already do a lot of work in Alexandria in that way before I became a poet laureate. So when I became poet laureate, it just kind of completed the circle. It's like, now I can do this through the arts as well, which is really lovely. So I definitely encourage you to do that. I encourage you to, take workshops when you can, attend arts events. But the one thing I always tell poets at any age, it's really important to read a lot of poetry. It's just, that's the only way you're going to grow as a poet. I think it's important to write and not be too judgmental on yourself, write and just, let it flow and let it percolate and come back to it. But all the while be reading a lot. And I think that's really important. I'm doing a haiku project right now in Alexandria, and we had a contest, and the winning haiku are going to be put in like yard signs. I'm going to put them all over the community. I know other cities do that. DC does that. And I just love the idea of just people walking around, going to the library, or, walking down the river and seeing a haiku. It becomes part of your life. Poetry becomes part of your life. And to me, that's just so beautiful and important.
Thank you. I knew you would. I knew you'd have a wonderful, eloquent answer, and I think that is one of the mysteries, right, for us advocates of the form and practitioners. We don't wait for art to come around. We put art into the world, and we celebrate art. We celebrate other people's art. We elevate other voices, and that's a way, I think, a very easy and free way to be involved in any community is lift up other voices. That is a source of inspiration. It's a source of collaboration, and it's a great way to not feel alone in what can be a very solitary art. So, Zaina, thank you again. You're the complete package as a poet laureate, as a poet, and as a human being. So I'm so grateful that you're here tonight to dispense your wisdom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm waiting to hear all of you. And that's you're going to make my night. Thanks so much, Sean.
Excellent. My pleasure for sure. All right. So before we get to our young, amazing poets, we have another young, amazing poet who has been my partner in crime, co-judge. I say I look forward to this every year, and I do. There's nothing better than a flood of work coming in. The only hard part about it is making tough decisions. As a poet myself, I know all about rejection. Anyone that's done this for a long time knows that the rejections are much more frequent than the acceptances. So that part of it is not the best, but at a certain point, decisions have to be made. But there's nobody I'd rather go into that battle with than the person that is now my co-judge emerita. I always ask her, but she always says yes. So I never take her role for granted, but I'm always grateful for it. Maia Siegel, let me introduce you, and then I would love to hear you talk about anything you want to talk about. But Maia's poetry, and I don't even know if I've updated this, so she can correct me if there's new stuff, but she has been published or is forthcoming in, among others, the Southern Poetry Anthology from Texas Review Press, the Bennington Review, Poetry London, and Elsewhere with a capital E, Elsewhere. Go seek her out. Her poetry has been recognized by institutions such as the Poetry Society and the Young Arts Foundation. She currently attends Yale University. And again, among many other talents, she is my co-judge for this annual contest. And I'll just say it flatters me to say that we tend to see things eye to eye. It's never by design, but rather than flatter her, I'm going to flatter myself and say, if Maia's seeing things that I'm seeing, we're on the right track. So Maia, thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this. And there's very few people I'd also want to hear opinions about as it relates to young poetry. I know that you are a huge advocate for the art form and a wonderful practitioner of your own work. So thanks for being here. Talk to us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Oh my God, Sean, you have like a otherworldly ability to introduce people. You make people feel so good. Yeah, no, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be working on this again. I love this contest. I have been on the other side of teen poetry contests submitting like for years and years. And I think they can often feel so kind of impenetrable whenever you're applying. But then on the other side of it, it all feels so easy. You're like, oh, I get to read fantastic poems and, love them. So yeah, no. And I loved that the theme was connection, because that does feel like the entire point of poetry. And one thing that really was wonderful with the winning poems and with all the poems that we read that we really loved, is that connection was really taken seriously on like an interpersonal level. So there were just really wonderful kind of characterizations in the poems, and really an attention to voice that we also saw formally. There were really wonderful formal decisions. Naomi, to have your poetic sequence and to have so many different characters kind of really shown formally also was so amazing to see. And Claudia, you have this really kind of almost superhumanly natural ability to like understand the line break. And so the line break is like so on the breath, but it also totally syncs up with this car imagery. So like we feel like we're winding these lines as we go down the poem, which is just fantastic. Yeah, and so, you know, I could go on and on, but there really was this idea of connection being between two people, being between the people we live with, mothers and daughters, friends, and how the poem can really deconstruct those relations and kind of get at the minute details of them. And I'm so excited to hear you guys read and to hear them in the voices of the poets themselves. So I'll stop. I'll let you guys take over.
I usually ask if you'll share some work. I will give you the option to do that now or at the end, or.
Yeah, I mean, I could do like a poem or two now.
I would love that.
Okay, yeah. I have kind of so two poems, they're short. I've gotten really into figurative painters recently that only do landscapes. And so they're titled for two painters that I really like, Fairfield Porter and Lois Dodd. Okay, so Fairfield Porter. A small red barn with the dirt smoothed over. I knew one like that. Inside's white, a bleached skeleton. It was covered with your paintings, landscapes the size of deli napkins, a camel even once, standing suspect, blue bending long, pink clawing over swaths of yellow, a rolled carpet of the natural. I walked through the bones, saw there were no faces on the women, painted sitting in the light. Me neither. Once you took me into the forest for a photograph. You set me in front of the bushes, the trees pivoting on their small feet. The cut down stubs where I would tug at your blonde hair were hollowing into shell. Great, you said, steadying yourself against the wormy, indiscriminate swirl. Now look away. And then this one is called Lois Dodd, who has a painting of a barn burning. And here was the burn, the windows glaring up at the house's brow, a furrowing, darkening Tetris of mouths. A skinned cat lived in. I knew a boy who sheared his own sheep for a long-shouldered coat. He only took it off to dance. He would take girls into the woods and allow them to wear it only if naked. You could bend down in it and become roadkill, ass up. We all lined up to become dead and animal. Then grease fire, one day near fall, an explosion down his family's farm road. What did he bring out? Yes, just the cream-colored coat, otherwise naked, sheepskins smothering him through the blast. His pale nipples peaked like bird beaks open through the heat. The way he jumped over the rubble was like dancing. His name was a common one. All right, that's all. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I would be remiss if I did not ask you to say a few words about, for young poets or poets of any age really that are tuning in and thinking the same things that I asked Zaina to talk about, which is, as a young poet, what is a way to get started? Do I start entering contests? How do I find my community? Just any words of encouragement or advice for someone that maybe wants to jump in, but just doesn't know how to.
Yeah, I think what I found was that contests can be a great structure just for getting yourself to write, because I think sometimes the hardest part is just really keeping on.
Yeah.
But I do feel like writing for yourself and not the contest is something that I totally remember my friends and I struggling to make sure we were doing. And so just making sure your poetry saying what you want to say, and that feels really essential. I think, contests are great, but also creating a shared doc with a friend who also writes is almost better, and to have really just one person needs to look at it for it to be shared. And so that's what I've done for years. It's just to have a shared doc with a friend is kind of like the most intimate experience of poetry you can have.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll just humbly add, not only here, I totally agree with that. I don't think anyone that's here tonight needs to hear this advice, but for anyone that is tuning in or curious, one piece of advice I would certainly offer, because it sounds a little bit trite, it sounds very simple, but like we see in life, sometimes the most profound answers are very straightforward. And that's something Maya touched on. Writing for yourself, first and foremost, is kind of where it begins and ends. And if you're satisfying some kind of impulse or some kind of itch that you want to scratch intellectually or spiritually, there is a lasting value in that. And very few awards or publications will equal the feeling that you have when you feel like you've set out to articulate something and you've articulated it satisfactorily, or in those rare instances, astonished yourself with what came out. That lasts, and that also keeps you going. At my age, having been writing for a long time and seeing a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly, the people I see that burn out or feel disappointed by the process are the ones that tend to get lost in chasing trends or writing for publication. The art that's meaningful is always original, and it always seems to come from a voice that only could have written that particular poem. We've already heard that from the first two readers, and I think we're going to see that bear out with the rest of the readers tonight. Okay, it's time. What I want to do is I want to welcome our two grand prize winners from each category, and then we'll go in alphabetical order. I'll say right up front, there were a handful of finalists that are not able to join tonight, regrettably because of schedules, but in a weird way, they all sent me emails, which they didn't have to do, but they courteously let me know, but they're all doing interesting stuff. So in a weird way, I'm delighted. That's just proving that summer is summer. People have a lot of things going on. There's travel, there's activities. So of course we didn't expect that every single person could be here, but we always hope that we can get as many as possible. But our two grand prize winners are here. So it's just a thrill. And what I want to do is not introduce them. I'd like them to introduce themselves and welcome them to read their poems and talk about their process, their poem, or anything they want to talk about. So every year we have two categories. For category one is age 13 to 18. And the winner this year for that group is Naomi Ling. Naomi, congratulations for being our winner in this category. Congratulations for very obviously being a incredibly talented and expressive, sensitive poet. I think I speak for Maya and myself when I say that it's our great joy to elevate your great work. So thank you for being here tonight to read for us.
Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. My name is Naomi Ling, and I'm a Chinese American poet based in Maryland. I'm also a high school senior. I'm so honored to be here tonight. And I just want to thank the judges from 1455 and the other finalists and winner for making this happen and amplifying the voices of young writers like me. So just a couple notes before I read my poem. My poem is actually inspired by the Joy Luck Club, which is a book that I'm sure some of you might have heard of. Written in 1989, The Joy Luck Club was Amy Tan's first novel, and it sold 275,000 hardcover copies. And the success of her book increased publishers' willingness to gamble on other books by Asian American writers. So it was truly a trailblazer. For my poem, please keep in mind that there's a trigger warning for child neglect. Right. With love, your Chinese American daughter, Jingmei. Mother, I'm searching in the bushes for you, a flash of fur darting among the azaleas you never watered. It's been 2 months and I still don't understand cerebral aneurysm, how it hardens my lips, my tongue, and every Asian part of me you resented. You never said good daughter, proud daughter, the way they do in movies, with strip-whitened teeth and a freshly baked hug, but I hope you still meant it. It's been 2 months, but I've given up searching for rabbits in the outskirts of our suburb where boys catch dragonflies in their mouths. Do you remember that lazy Sunday, buried in July, the evening tiptoeing by as you taught me mahjong? 2 players not enough, you grumbled, as I fumbled with my winds and bamboos and dots, all the tiles blurred, and suddenly I was 7 again. Hunched over the lazy Susan as you retold your quailing story, only this time you abandoned all 3 of your babies on the journey here. Your clothes, the only hope, clinging to your back, and I would gasp in horror, imagining my siblings thrown from their mother like roadkill, like resentment. And I used to resent you, Ma, just a little bit. Just enough that I wouldn't be anything you told me to. I could have been your perfect ABG, Ma. The way Waverly clenches metals between her teeth and kisses your ankles in respect, I could have been anything. Only it's me, Ma. Me, Jingmei Junwoo, the way you wanted it. The ways I could have reassured you during your last breaths, that yes, I will keep weaving the strings of our legacy when your hands can no longer tie the knot. Rose. In the gauzy mid-morning light, you brew tea, green for you, chai for me, and tell me your growing pains. In this home, we are floating creatures of deserted want and belonging. I trace your younger figure in my steaming cup, taste the shivers of a woman forced into captivity at 16, a concubine, left with shattered dignity and glass beads for a necklace. You brew a tale of power struggles and survival, fighting for your place in a family as traditional as the sun's path across the sky. Most of all, you were lonely. A woman must never be her most tender thing, your body a mere possession or transaction. So how did you escape? I can't help but raise my brows at your tales, each time scarier than before. The past storms your eyes, a fleeting reminder of all Sioux woman's pain. The generational scars we inflict on each other. Another life, you finally say. In another life, you will believe me. Waverly. As a girl, I learned to hold my breath around you, steal the silence, shush the air, turn the key. I'd hold it in the moments between shock and disappointment when your face contorted like the best performer in the circus. You can do better. And I did, sweeping every trophy you could polish and wax so that when guests came over, wailing, Waverly, you're the daughter in my dreams, I learned that I was an extension of you. Not Waverly the girl, but Waverly, the daughter of Lindo, who passed along her talent, her bloodline, her everything. You gave everything, and I still didn't want it. So that day, as I escaped from your needy arms, there came the sweet, sultry release of inhibition, flying down Main Street, toppling weaved baskets and Chinese vegetables. I saw her. She was not the world's next chess champion or child prodigy. She was not as delicate, as small-footed as her mother claimed. She was not even an inkling of her mother's ideations. But she was enough for this world to love. So I named her Waverly Zhang. Lena. Mama, do you see me? Or am I a mirage in the pool of your regrets? Lost in translation are more than our words. You, a fortress of a woman I can never conquer. Last night, I dressed in my father's clothes, chipped armor with shin guards. I slipped onto the drawbridge, dead of the night. Larks dared not to sing here. The doors rustled, but wouldn't budge. I touched it. That is to say, I knelt by your bedside, tenderly, like every daughter holds herself. Once the doors vanished, I peered inside, the dark claiming every hair on my body. All was quiet. How do you live like this? And then I saw you, scrubbing at a marble tile for stains that neither of us could see. Breathless, I began to run. Every turn brought me back to you. Your prone figure was helpless, to my touch impenetrable, just like your eyes when I tried to pry them open. You were alive. Open up to me, Mama, someone far away cried. I beg of you. Thank you. So I wrote this poem after reading Joy Luck Club in my English class, and I was so moved by the multiple storylines and perspectives that I just had to put these thoughts onto paper. And the way it's structured is just a 4-part poem, and each daughter is writing a letter to their mother, hence the title. So I think the connections here are not only across timelines and generations, but also the way that every character is grappling with their own fates and how they can't control them. But there were just so many intricate dynamics that I was able to draw on from the book, especially the role of women and marital stereotypes that they had to bear. So again, thank you so much to Maia and Sean and everyone from 1455 for this opportunity, and congrats to everyone here tonight.
Naomi, thank you. And I thank you for writing that poem. I thank you for submitting it. I thank you for being here to read it. And I thank you for reminding everyone about the power of poetry. You talk about Joy Luck Club. Here is a poem that is ambitious and encompassing as a novel. It's as vivid as a screenplay, and yet it contains the magic that poetry can accomplish by using words and language to take us into other places, and hopefully for many of us, show us things we needed to know and that we should know, and ultimately help us connect on a much deeper level. So I'm just in awe, and I'm humbled, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, no, just really, it kind of shows the ability of literature in general to kind of spawn other literatures. There is something so wonderful about, one form of novel kind of creating a poem out of it, and then hopefully a painting, and then, pottery. You don't know where it can go after that. It just really goes so beyond the novel, even to become its own world. Yeah, really wonderful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, what more needs to be said? And, that's another thing about any piece of art, right? At the end of the day, it needs to speak for itself. It's a real privilege to hear the poet read the work and talk about the work. But when it's done correctly, there is an element of a mic drop where it's like, does anything else really need to be said? And that's the most beautiful compliment I think any reader can give any writer, when it really answers all the questions it raises. So Naomi, again, thank you. Congratulations. We're really appreciative. So category 2 is for the age 19 to 25 group. Again, so much good poetry came in, so many difficult choices, but once again, Maia and I came together rather quickly and easily as it related to our final choices. Claudia Marino is here. She is our grand prize winner for category 2. Claudia, please introduce yourself and read your winning poem.
Okay, thank you. Hi, people hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. I'm Claudia. I am a college student. I'm an actor, writer, and poet, which often feels like the most sort of private and secret little identity. So that is just one of many, many reasons that I want to extend a massive thanks of gratitude to Sean and Maia and everybody at 1455 for creating this space and for affirming to young writers that our voices matter, and that they want to be heard and that they are sought after. I personally began writing poetry sort of seriously, as in taking the form seriously, taking myself seriously within it, in high school. And it was sort of, like a very private, almost lonely little experience. I had some people to talk to about it, but not a ton. It felt like very much something that was like my little weird thing. So to have the space to share it with a bunch of other incredible young poets is really tremendous. And I'm so grateful for all of the words I've gotten to hear tonight, especially Naomi's. Your poem is deeply moving, and I'm so grateful to have been able to hear it. So grateful to you for sharing it with all of us. And just like really happy to be here. So just to bear with me in my scrambled notes, that's why I keep glancing down. My writing, thinking about this prompt and sort of trying to organize my brain to be able to talk about this, I think the emotion from which I find myself writing most frequently is gratitude. I have often said that that is my favorite thing to feel because it is a mixture of joy and luck, and it's something that feels very sort of shiny and bright, and just kind of feels good to sit in and to write in. And so when I find myself in that place, the themes and sort of topics that often come up most are ideas of community and connection, particularly between the women in my life, in sort of a very personal, but also a kind of a broad way. As a woman, as a feminist, as a queer person, I find that my relationships with the women in my life in all sorts of ways are often the most sort of deep and meaningful, and inspire the words and the gratitude. So this poem exists as sort of a representation of joy in the quotidian, in an evening and some friendship, and sort of that feeling that I think I a lot at me too, and that I felt a lot at 15 of every day I'm standing on the precipice of something sort of yawning and cavernous, and I don't know what is going to be inside of it, but every conversation with someone I love, every person I meet, every day that I live, it's sort of an education about falling into it. And so that's sort of what this is. And because I'm an older sister, it is formatted in the form of sort of an advice situation, because that is sort of my second nature. Cool. It's called How to Make a Universe. Have two friends and a lot of wine. Sit on mismatched stools at a towny pub and shout above the dusty rural din about shaving your legs and makeup and first kisses, how to be a good feminist, how to fail a little. Then get in the car, take a wrong turn, take two, and wind up where you thought you weren't going, and follow that asphalt till it bleeds into the sky, and then drive there. Keep going till the stars become a fine mist, like snowfall, like sparklers, like the glint in your headstrong friend's eyes, and come back down to earth, not with a kiss, not lightly, but with a smack, with a laugh, hot, heavy from your sternum, a laugh that takes something from you and gives it back, like a magic trick. Return home and do not be tired. Plan a life you couldn't possibly live, and gossip, you must, you are women. And knit your words into a day you can wear tomorrow, and chalk it up to learning, to experience. Experience, she said. That's the only reason I ever wanted to do anything anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. So, wow. I'll say what I already said a couple of times, which is it's such a wonderful privilege to fall in love with a poem and the special relationship that exists on the page, but to hear the writer read their own words is so great. And just like with Naomi, I'm just in such delightful awe of the wisdom and the compassion, the humor, and the joy that just effuses from that poem. Talk a little bit about, you mentioned being a writer and an actor. It's very clear you bring some of that verve of acting to your reading. Talk about how you go with the world and make sense of things through poetry.
Yeah. Sorry, say that one more time.
Talk about, if you care to, a little bit about how poetry in particular is a way that you are able to kind of look at the world and process things and talk about connection, you know, and in your entree into making sense of our crazy world through words.
Like, I think one of the reasons that poetry is such an effective way to make sense of things is the double side of that sword of its sort of loneliness is the fact that it is private and is something that can exist just for you forever, or until you're completely ready for it to be shown. In sort of the theater world, which is the other artistic world that I inhabit most frequently, there's not a lot of, I mean, you sure go in your room all you want. That's not what that's for, though. You're supposed to be doing that for and with other people. But poetry is, you can take your time with it. It can be anywhere in the world. It's just sort of very much for you. And I don't know, I think I'm a very wordsy person. Obviously, anybody who writes sort of tends to be, but I like to think of them as sort of like, I don't know, like these delightful little like treasures and building blocks that are yours to sort of arrange, kind of like, I don't know, like a children's mosaic with lots of glitter and feathers and markers and streamers and things that like you can find the ones that sparkle the most for you and sort of put them in the right place. And if that doesn't look good, like put them over here. And so it feels empowering to me to feel a thing and then to search for the little collection of thought that represents it, and then to sort of like put one after another until it looks something like the picture you might draw of that feeling.
Well said. I'm certain I'm not alone in noting that your passion and enthusiasm are apparent, and you channel that wonderfully into your work. So I tip my cap. And again, I'm thankful because it's very inspiring to read that kind of work. Maya, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, poetry was an oral tradition before it was written, and you really see why with your poetry. You bring such an energy and an actor's, diction and emotion behind the words. But it's real. It's like, that's the oral tradition right there. You're being the most poety a poet can be there. And so thank you for sharing. I mean, it's one thing, you feel this wonderful propulsive voicey quality while reading it, but to hear you do it just totally drives it home. And makes it feel like a dramatic monologue. Totally. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Well, listen, Claudia, I hope you don't need excessive props, because your work does speak for itself. But if winning this award is that little bit of encouragement that you keep at it, I certainly implore you to keep at it, because the world needs your voice. And I look forward to reading more of your work. So consider yourself very encouraged from your friends at 1455.
Thank you. I absolutely do.
Awesome. Okay, let's keep the party going. I hope I don't miss anyone, but I'm gonna just go in alphabetical order. But I think next up is Audrey Moyer.
Hi guys, my name is Audrey Moyer, and I'm so honored to be a finalist this year. I'm 15 and from Stevenson, Virginia. Writing for me has always been a way to turn my feelings into like a work of art. Ever since I was like a girl, I've always loved the smaller details, the details that people often overlook. And ever since becoming a writer, I look for these details even harder to like change the words to make my poems sound prettier. I loved how this theme particularly could be molded into anything. So I wanted my poem to be a symbol of that human connection. But I wondered how I could use these little details to explain loss and how the connection still remains, but in a different form. So my poem was about the passing of someone who is really dear to me, and how it can be difficult to try to harness those memories and think about it in a positive light, and how it can feel a little overwhelming at times. So it was about how everything can feel like a reminder about feelings that are bittersweet to accept. So without further ado, this is my poem, Family Trees. Out the windows with wooden frames, the trees stand, offering cherries after carrying the snow. It fits like a vase to a rose. Polaroid of us, you're wearing medium wash jeans. Polaroid of us, holding hands like a movie scene, as if yellow captions were at the bottom of the screen. The anticipation is all too dramatic. Over coffee and in the rain, I'm ecstatic. I crinkle the napkin to my left and fidget with the spoon on my right. With your heart I fit, the record skips. You're on your way home. Before I know it, just like silk, your hand slips. I'm all alone. I sit in the living room, plate of olives, dried up roses I find sitting at the end table. If books would stack when I thought of you, the neighbors would think I love a good fable. If you were a color, you would be white, not because you're boring, because you're stable. Or maybe it's because you're from heaven, my only angel. Or maybe you're more like green. Green is lush. Green grows like trees. You're an emerald divine. In a living room, there's an empty space in the wall. There should be a portrait of you. Pink satin curtains cover my apartment complex, numbered 132. I sit in silence. What should I do? I sit so still, in need of guidance. Tell me what to do. I lean over the balcony. It's my living room. With a plate of pasta and a silver fork, I dine into my food. After waiting, the time is fading. I realize all this mess is because I just want to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Among other things, I would say I just appreciate the evocation of the sensory images. We got Polaroids, albums, olives, books, food. Talk a little bit about what it's obvious what your intention was. I'm trying to think of a non-dumb way to ask this, but talk about how naturally it comes to you, or for this particular poem, thinking about connection. We're in a world we can touch and taste and smell in this poem, and you wonderfully evoke these different ways that we process the world.
So for my poem's imagery, I was really inspired about how loss will be shaped when I'm older. And now looking at it, I'm just a teen girl in suburbs. So I was thinking about how I could project that when I'm older, in my 20s, in an apartment on my own, and thinking about how it could be a reminder. I wanted to use the words again to paint a visual that could only really be shaped into the form of a poem. As being a poet, which is something I love to call myself because it makes me feel so cool. But it's like, it's something that truly feels like something that it's like art. And it's like something that I feel so happy and moved. And it turns my feelings into something that could be negative and shining a positive light on it. And yeah, I feel like putting all the words together for this poem, it's like a puzzle. And it was like using the imagery and the words, I wanted it to feel like I was older. And I wanted it to be kind of like a future me letter, so that when I look back on it, I want to know what's the same, what changed, and how relatable it is, because I really hope that I have a really cool apartment with olives and books and stuff like that. But I just wanted to say thank you so much to Maya and Sean and everybody at 1455. Huge congratulations to the winners. Your guys' work was amazing. Let's all keep writing, because this is just something that I love so much, and I will definitely be doing it all my life. So thank you guys. Have a great day, and I can't wait to hear everybody else's poems.
Yay. Maya, before I pass the mic to you, I feel compelled as a poet of a certain age. I was alive when Polaroids and vinyl were cutting edge technology. So now it's a throwback. I took Polaroid pictures as a kid, and it was the coolest thing in the world. So I have to make note of that. I think Zena will agree with me. I can't hear about these things without a little bit of kind of sardonic amusement and joy.
Yeah, no, I love that people have really caught on to basically that you're painting a real painting here. You're really creating a set for us to live in. And I especially love those green curtains. That's so visceral. You really see that. And really what I globbed onto was the rhyme as a kind of way of mimicking memory. That felt like that was really there. And rhyme, we don't see it a lot in poems now, just because I think often people don't know how to do it in a way that feels really real. But with this, it really feels like, every time it rhymes, it's like you're going back to that memory. You're just like, the memory of the last line is reverberating in the next. And so I thought that was a really kind of clever way to formally interact with the content. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. It was lovely.
The group high five. What's cooler than talking about poetry and hearing other people read poetry? I couldn't be happier right now. So once again, thank you to everyone that's here right now. This is just bliss for me to hear great poems from great poets and talk about it and get into the weeds. This is the good stuff. Okay, next up, and I hope I say the name, I hope I pronounce this right, but Sanchita, please correct me. Sanchita Sahu, please introduce yourself and forgive me if I did not pronounce that correctly.
Oh, no, it's you did a great job. Hello, everyone. This is Sanchita, and I'm very happy to be here reciting my poem for you lovely folks. Thank you to Sean and Maya and everyone from 1455 for giving me this opportunity to share a part of my work. And thank you, Zita, for your amazing words in the beginning of the session. So I'm a writer based in New Delhi, India, and I wrote this poem actually based on a prompt given to me by my advisor during a class. And I hate prompt-driven writing. So I really can't, once I'm stuck in a box, I can't think anymore. But this was during the lockdown. And so the bittersweet spell of nostalgia struck me one day and spurred me on. And as Zara said earlier, I'm constantly being bilingual, multilingual, actually. I mean, I'm constantly thinking in different languages, different, transfusing between different identities constantly. And there's no particular structure to how I think when I write poetry. And it's a mesh of everything that I am. And so, that kind of played out while writing this. And my grandparents have played a big role in nurturing my love for literature. So this was for them primarily. This was for our home back in Odisha, which is a beautiful coastal state in India and also my hometown. So I'll recite this. I hope you like it. I still call him Odisha. The first step on the staircase, my long white skirt dragged behind in a haste, dusty books, artifacts, that flower vase from Cuba. Ajah's ghost sitting in the library, sips tea and chews a beetle leaf, tracing Eliot's land of waste. A couple more steps, I'm at a curve, black tresses flowing, feet shuffling, my anklets swirl. Miniature go, a patachitra, Mama's elementary doodles. Eyes walls adorned with countless memories, the big lonely house her world. 80 days fall short, Jules Verne. 3/4 covered heart space, darting like my coal-lined eyes, a crimson face. Poignant letters, old cassettes, the dwarf jasmine tree. Summer days spent treasure hunting, sniffing every nook and corner. I'm like Blyton on a Doyle case. The last flight, my brows fret, somber spots of light on the silk kurti, sun rays on the parapet. Clueless brain, indoor plants, a blank white screen. In the city, I sit, reminisce, and yearn for not the old house, literature, or bloodlines, but my first love, a Bombay sunset. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As the person that has the good fortune to be the first reader of the poems as they come in, I can assure everyone that's listening and watching and paying attention that there really are no preconceived notions. I'm not looking for anything in particular, but I do want to understand and see the world in different ways. So I think as writers, we all learn to be allergic to cliche. We don't want to describe things the way we've heard them described. It's not exciting to hear someone use an expression that's been expressed. So it's not surprising to me that the winners that emerged this year come from different places and are writing about different things and different experiences. And as the judge, it's a very humbling thing to feel smarter and more well-read and more well-traveled through the wisdom that's communicated through these poems. So I'm the one that should be thanking you all. I really am. I'm a smarter, more cultured person for having read these poems. And I thank you for being here to read that beautiful poem. If you want to talk a little bit about what inspired it, and how you think about connection through these different things, I would welcome any additional wisdom you'd like to drop on us.
So I think I wrote this in my introduction as well to you. Poetry is really somewhere like I find a space where you can just be vulnerable. There's no choice. There's nothing to hide behind. Because I write short stories, and there's so much like to do with form and prose that where you can act like someone else. But in poetry, I find myself thinking about very visceral, home-like emotions where I'm drawn back to my roots. I'm drawn back to the people I know and love, and I can only write about them. So it's a very intimate exercise in love and writing, and so it's one of the driving factors for this poem as well. Where so my grandparents are both professors of English literature. So whenever I would be back at home, I would sit in their little dusty library, just reading up, lapping up like books that they're reading, and my Aja, as I write in this poem, was obsessed with Eliot to a fault, and I found myself constantly thinking about it. Yeah. So I'm very grateful to have had a childhood where I was completely exposed to all these literary giants, and that reflects somewhat in what I write and think. But I'm very grateful that you find this illuminating, because this is just something that I feel like I just want to express, and nothing more, nothing grand about it. And but thank you so much for having me here, and congratulations to everyone. I love the winning poems. Like I can only imagine what kind of immense talent goes into writing these words. And thank you so much for the panelists. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And one of the things that what you were just saying reminds me of the truism that not all poetry, but in a sense, certainly on a figurative level, poetry is in conversation with itself and those that wrote before us, those that will come after us. And I think that really underscores the notion of connectivity in art and the way that we are dialoguing with previous generations, previous cultures. And it always brings us home to this place where we do have a connection by virtue of the fact that we're all mortal and we all are only here for a brief time, but we're trying to make sense of what we're seeing. Maia, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one thing I love Eliot. I absolutely immediately got the Eliot nod here. And, right, thinking about connection, I mean, you so obviously have such a strong connection with these other writers. And I love that these are kind of modernist writers, really spanning a lot of different kind of countries and times. And so it was really wonderful to see a connection to a home, but really the home for this writer is the kind of like international world of letters. And that seems to be kind of the shared poet's home. And so it's really wonderful to read that in this poem and to feel that. And right, as Sean was saying, there is this feeling of, you know, every poem is an ars poetica, almost more than in any other art form, just because poems are all about what words can do. And so your words did so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Hear, hear. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. Last and certainly not least, we have Chloe Wong. Chloe, please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your poem and then read it for us.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm on my phone right now.
Yep, so. Can hear you perfectly.
Okay, cool. I'm Chloe Wong, and I'm a high school student, and I live in Arcadia, California. It's been really great to hear all the poems tonight, especially the ones from the other high school writers, because I don't have a lot of like friends who like to write poetry, so it's always fun to like meet other young people who share that interest. The poem I wrote is A Golden Shovel after Wilfred Owen's Dulce Decorum Est. I think I'm saying that correctly. And I wrote it after the Uvalde shooting last year, and like I came back to it after, you know, some of the more recent mass shootings that have been happening in America. And the original poem that The Golden Shovel was based off of was written in like the 1900s after World War I, and was basically a condemnation of the idea that people should die in service of their country. And that reminded me a lot of the rhetoric I was hearing after the Uvalde shooting, when a lot of politicians were either, not to bring politics into it, but a lot of politicians were defending Second Amendment rights over, at least it appeared to me, like the lives of, you know, young students like me who were threatened by gun violence. And especially like I live really close to Monterey, where the Lunar New Year shooting happened. I grew up there, so you know, it's definitely like an issue that matters a lot to me. And so I hope you enjoy this poem. The Old Lie. You find me in the garden, cradle shot, mud hot, hard begging. This story would never end with mother wringing blood from a school dress, if not for the body you stand in the brushwood to bury. But you tell me you love me, just not that you've hurt me, or that you mess with God-given weapons in the woods. Mostly the lies that you go after cord, such as rabbits and other vermin of the sort. What I don't hear, with each kill you rest high on the porch front, scoring ichor from each arm. I mistake the blurred zest in your eyes for my reflection, and like the kid rotting at your ankles, I ask to come in. I want thicker bandages, warm milk, soup. Your house is white, and I've yet to see children who could pick me up, hold me tight, walk me home. At my beg, less ardent hunters would pry these barrel ribs apart, but you needle for an exit, say the bandages are gone, that there is no more milk and soup. And you stress some wicked promise between us. Once I die, my flesh gets to feed desperate fields. So the mulch rises, but I do not stop it, and other lambs eat your well-dressed glory. How sweet and fitting it is to die for one's country.
Wow. So I had said at the beginning, you know, again, reading all of these poems, hearing them tonight, it does remind me with a wistful sense of nostalgia that I think the world in many ways was less complicated when I was younger. You know, we usually talk about social media and the myriad implications of how that has complicated lives. And, you know, there are some obviously great elements like what we're doing tonight, the opportunity of technology to afford us a chance to be in an event like this. But I can assure everyone here that when I was growing up, the possibility of a school shooting was probably the farthest thing from my mind, and I think my peers' minds, because it's frankly seldom, if ever, happened. So this is a reality that we're all dealing with now. And, you know, I think people I'm sure most of us have been asked or will be asked, why are you writing about something so sad? And I think it's a dumb question, because the answer is we're writing about it because we have to. If the world wasn't ugly, we wouldn't have to write about ugly things. The challenge is to make ugly things beautiful in their way. And I think when human beings are wrestling with ugliness, there's a beauty in that. And there's an opportunity to connect sensitive souls who are bearing witness. So once again, and I don't want to repeat myself, but it's the right kind of repetition. I just am in awe at the wisdom and the compassion, and the way that you bear witness in this poem. I don't know. It's like, that's a mic drop. What question do I ask you? But if you want to say a few more words about kind of your process and how you kind of decided to tackle this theme, I certainly would welcome any other thoughts you have, to let you kind of showcase your process.
Yeah, so I just thought it was interesting, like the parallels between the situation that Owen was talking about in his original poem, which is that, you should put, personal sacrifice is fine when it comes to, upholding your country or patriotism. And obviously it's not the exact same situation, but seeing a lot of people being like, well, these school shootings or these shootings in general are just going to keep happening, and that's what needs to happen in order to preserve, personal freedom. I guess it just kind of bothered me a little, like at the time, as I'm sure I know it bothers a lot of other people my age, and especially frustrating because you can tell from Owen's poetry that this kind of just keeps on happening throughout history. But hopefully it gets better. And I know like the poem is kind of like not very optimistic, but I do think that things will get better, especially because a lot of people my age are speaking out and becoming more aware of what needs to change in society.
Yes, and your poem is a reminder, Chloe, that I think what the forces of evil and the forces of violence want is apathy. And poetry and poets, human beings that speak up and articulate our pain and what the progress we want to see, ensure that apathy and silence will not win. So the struggle is a very noble one. I think it's a very beautiful one. I certainly feel incredibly empowered when I'm surrounded by other beautiful human beings that are trying to make us ask the difficult questions that need to be asked. To do it in a way that provides insight and beauty is a special gift. So I thank you. And Maia, I certainly welcome any thoughts you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking about connection, to find the connection between something that's going on that's really horrific today, and then Wilfred Owen, who feels like such an amazing and interesting pick. You don't hear a lot of Wilfred Owen. I really loved that. And I think especially with the kind of reverse golden shovel format, you're literally weaving in his words into today. And so I thought it was a really, really smart choice formally. I thought it really kind of merged the issues together. And I thought you picked a really wonderful line of his kind of for the present moment. I think a high zest for some sort of desperate glory is, such a problem today with so many kind of figures in our politics and in our kind of wider world. And so thank you so much for writing this. This really, I think it gets at it in a way that has so much history behind it, where this poem feels so kind of grounded in all the pain that poets have been addressing for so long. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, we will have. I'm so delighted that we will be showcasing these poems in movable type. Maia and I will have some additional thoughts, but again, the thoughts are respectful and in an attempt to celebrate. But I want to stress that, as the nominal judge of these poems, there's very little that needs to be said. I think, as everyone here has heard, the poems acquit themselves quite nicely and capably without any judge commenting on them. So Maya and our comments are really to just say thank you, and wow. And I'll just repeat what I said earlier, which is, what a reward for me to read these poems and be part of this event, because again, I feel smarter, more sensitive, more capable, and frankly, a little envious of the talent that I'm seeing on display. It's such a joy. It is something I look forward to every year, like I said, but it wouldn't be as fun or as lightning if the work wasn't good. And I thank all of you individually and collectively for ensuring that this contest continues to raise the bar, continues to be a source of inspiration for people that are checking this out. Hopefully you're inspiring each other, but the work that you're doing is inspiring the world. So I can't say it enough. I thank you all for doing the work, for sharing your work, and being here to talk about your work. It's an extraordinary pleasure on behalf of 1455. I thank all of you for being part of our 5th annual StoryFest. To our special guests tonight, Zaina and Maya, thank you for being here. If you have any closing thoughts, you're welcome to express them.
I'll keep it really short. I feel connected tonight. Thank you guys so much for bringing poetry into the space, bringing yourselves into this space, connecting all of us with your words. You really brought it home. Thank you. Thank you so much. Keep connecting. Please connect with each other. Start that poetry doc with each other. We all need it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really I feel so hopeful. I feel filled with hope hearing all of you. On the one hand, just knowing that poetry is alive and you have such creative and beautiful voices, and also just this generation is a thinking and feeling and a generation that's really scratching below the surface. So that fills me with so much hope. And the other thing I've been thinking about is how poetry makes us more kind. Is because we're in this space and thinking about everything, and we're thinking from our hearts, I felt the real kindness from everybody tonight, and I think that's just really so lovely. So thank you all for giving me hope and sharing the kindness amongst ourselves.
I couldn't think of a better way to end it. So I will say thank you to each and every one of you. I'm just so happy that we were able to gather. We are recording this, so this will live on proudly at the 1455 site on our YouTube page. It's we have made a historical event, but I ask all of you, please keep writing. Please be in touch. Please be part of the 1455 community. And I say with tremendous confidence and happiness that I expect to see and hear more from all of you. There's just too much talent and beauty out there for it not to happen. So be safe. Enjoy your summers. Congratulations for being finalists. Again, we don't like to judge and compare, but at a certain point, we just like to celebrate excellent work. And that's what we did tonight. So again, I thank you. And we will see you soon. And check out Movable Type in a couple of months. Your work will be in print and we will celebrate it there as well. So thank you for being here tonight, and we will see you all soon. Be well.